John Leboutillier is a former Republican member, U.S. House Representative, and he joins us via Skype from New York State for more on this. John, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
You again.
Yeah, so these are interesting times, and a lot of Republicans we've seen in recent times, you're a Republican yourself, have struggled to remain loyal to the cause because Donald Trump's the face of it.
That is true, but there are people like me who are Republicans who don't like Trump, but we're statistically very insignificant. I would say 90% of Republican voters are still with Trump and are going to stay with Trump all the way to November 3rd. He's got incredible loyalty among Republican voters, I might add, and nobody else. Everybody else can't stand him. I don't think he can win. He's alienated too many people. But, you know, we got 60 days to go, and he's saying and doing things that are so insane that there's no telling what's going to happen in the next 60 days. This stuff you mentioned about missing and dead soldiers normally would be political suicide for any candidate. But the funny thing is, with the Trump voter, they don't care. Nothing he says bothers them. They swallow all of it and still swear total loyalty to Donald Trump. It's as if they're a brainwashed member of a cult.
All right, so the last election, more Americans voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. And the issue in the end was the collegiate system. So has he annoyed enough people that the colleges won't work in his favor this time?
Well, that's called our electoral college. You're right. And every state has a certain amount of electors. It's the number of representatives to the House of Representatives plus the 2 senators. So that's the number of electoral votes each state has. And you need to accumulate 270 electors to win the election. And the last time Trump did, by winning Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, those 3 upper Midwestern states won the election for Trump. But here's the thing, Peter. He won those 3 states by a combined total of 77,000 votes. There were 135 million votes cast nationwide. He wins those 3 states by 77,000 votes. I mean, the narrowest of margins, but he did win. Now, this time, it's a different year, everything's different. With the COVID, with Biden is not Hillary, Trump is president, the economy is struggling. I think it's a much harder task for him to get to 270 electoral votes. And I think he knows it, which is why he's making these insane statements about voting twice and mail-in voting is corrupt. And there's going to be chaos, and we may never know who won the election. I think that's what he wants to happen.
All right, so we're now in campaigning season. It's gone into high gear. And what will start to happen is that there are visits and places and events that will be symbolic to the bigger questions. And Kenosha, I think, has become one of those moments. Both have arrived in Kenosha, and some would say they've had different outcomes. How would you assess Biden's visit and Trump's visit to Kenosha?
Excellent question, and it was an excellent week for the 2 candidates to use the tragedy that took place 2 weeks ago in Kenosha. They both used it to highlight what they think is their strength. Trump went on Tuesday, and only stressed law and order. He met with police. He didn't meet with any victims of the thing. He didn't meet, certainly, with the Blake family. And he's stressing law and order. You hear it out of his mouth constantly. Then Biden went yesterday, Thursday. He met with the family in private. He talked to Jacob Blake in the hospital on the telephone for 15 minutes. He then met with leaders of the community in a church and emphasized healing bringing all sides together. And there's the contrast. Trump going for law and order and tough approach, Biden going for unity and healing and a more humane style. Personally, I think the Biden approach works politically better. The polling shows it works better. The polling has shown all summer that Biden leads on the issue of who can reconcile the racial differences in America better, Biden or Trump. Biden wins that quite handily.
All right, so what other issues then are likely to come up in the next 60 days that both candidates are going to have to navigate to convince the American people that they're the best ones placed to take America forward?
Right. Well, the number one issue, according to every poll that's done from the voters' point of view, is handling the pandemic. And on that one, only a third of the people trust Trump on the pandemic. 2/3 don't trust him. That's what's ruined him politically this year, and of course has damaged the economy heavily also. Biden gets good marks on who believes could better handle the pandemic. But here's the thing. Trump never talks about the pandemic. When he can get away from it, he wants to talk about economics, foreign policy, the law and order that we just mentioned. He is afraid to run on his handling of COVID. 3 weeks from this coming Tuesday is the first of their 3 debates. It will be the most watched debate of the 3. And I think we'll see in that debate, Joe Biden will prosecute the case repeatedly that Trump bungled the pandemic. And in the process, 187,000 Americans are dead. The economy's in the trash, and it's on Trump. And I think that'll carry some weight. Trump will try to deflect and blame other people. We'll see how that goes on national TV. When he doesn't have a script, he doesn't have a teleprompter, and he's got to talk and say new things. I don't know that Trump can do it.
The race issue will come up in the debate, must do, surely, given what's played out. What position is Trump likely to take, if one at all?
He's going to do, I think he'll do what he's been doing, law and order. He thinks, he lives in a sort of a time warp back to the 68 era, 1968, when we had riots in the street, we had race riots, we had the terrible assassinations 2 months apart, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. And America was on fire that summer. And Johnson was president. His vice president was running, Hubert Humphrey. And Richard Nixon was the Republican. And Nixon ran, in part, on a law and order platform. And he did win the election. But he was not the president. Trump keeps running that law and order thing, but it doesn't work for him. And the polling shows it's not working.
All right, so Kamala Harris seems to have been an ace for Joe Biden, this an energy that's come through. We see that Joe Biden raised $364 million last month, and that's a record by any stretch of the imagination. Many saying it has a lot to do with Kamala Harris. Biden himself says that more than 1.5 million people donated for the first time. So again, if we're looking at the race story, has he found the answer to convince perhaps a lot of voters of color that were needed to be persuaded?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think what he did is he found the answer to get them to vote in November, because the real reason Hillary Clinton lost to Trump 4 years ago was simply that black voters didn't vote in as high numbers as they did the previous 2 elections for President Obama. You know, they voted heavily in 2008, 2012. And then some of them just stayed home. They didn't vote for Trump. They just didn't come out in the highest numbers. In Philadelphia, Detroit, Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Those are the 3 states I mentioned before that he lost, or that she lost by 77,000 votes. There are 77,000 Black American Democratic voters who didn't bother to vote that day and have kicked themselves ever since. Had they voted, Trump never gets to be president. This time they're going to vote, and to make sure of it, they're going to have Kamala Harris campaigning in Philadelphia, Detroit, Milwaukee, and other places too. And they're going to have former President and Mrs. Obama campaigning there heavily in October also to get that vote to come out.
All right, so there's the debates between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, but another one that's going to be looked at quite a bit is going to be Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence. How do you think that one's going to go?
I think it'll be a barn burner because they're both very good on their feet. Pence is in a box where he's got to defend everything Trump does, can't attack Trump. And Kamala Harris is a relentless prosecutor. She will go after the Trump record like nothing you've ever seen for an hour and a half. And I think it'll be a very good debate. I don't think it matters to the voters. We've learned that the vice presidential thing really doesn't have much to do with it. The real thing is Biden on the same stage with Trump. Ahead in the polls, what will Trump do to try to shake up the race? He'll try something. He tried Hillary. Remember, he was lurking around, walking around, looking over her shoulder and all that. I think he'll try some crazy stuff, and Biden will be ready for it, and Biden will really go after him.
All right, and I suppose in conclusion, maybe we can ask, is it there for Biden to lose? Is he that far ahead if we are to believe the polls?
Well, I do believe the good polling. When you read polls, you can tell if they're good or not by who they're asking, how many are they likely voters, and the margin of error. And the Trump campaign, by their behavior, is actually confirming that they're behind. And they're behind in all those states that we talked about, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, as well as North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona. And I think Biden's going to win most of them. And I think the polling's been clear. You know, Peter, since April of 2019, when Joe Biden announced his campaign, he was the last Democrat to come in the race. They polled then nationally, and he was ahead of Donald Trump by 8 or 9 points. Today, he's ahead by 9 points. He's been ahead of Donald Trump in every poll nationally for a year and a half. Donald Trump pulled all that stuff in Ukraine, trying to get dirt on Biden a year and a half ago, because his polling even then showed Biden was the toughest opponent for Trump to defeat. Here we are, a year and a half later. Biden has won the nomination. He's unified the Democratic Party, or let me say, Trump has unified the Democratic Party against Trump. And I think there'll be a huge turnout. And there are more anti-Trump voters than there are pro-Trump voters. And I think because of it, Biden will win.
All right, John, that's where we'll leave it. Thanks very much indeed. I have no doubt we'll have many more chats in the next 60 days. Exciting
times. Can't wait.
Thank you so much.